Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Ian Blackford is the SNP leader in Westminster. He spoke to the Commons earlier. This is what he had to say.
Delighted that the Leader of the Opposition has come round to a motion of no confidence. That should have happened before, but of course we will support it. Mr Speaker, as I mentioned, it is clear the clock is ticking. The Government needs to secure the safety of all our nations and should immediately postpone the Article 50 process and should immediately have talks with all the leaders of the opposition parties. Let's work together in all our interests, but let's listen to the voices of the parliamentarians that have been sent here. There is no support for this deal. It mustn't come back again. The obvious thing to do, the right thing to do, suspend Article 50, put this to the people in a people's vote. Yeah.
That's the Leader of the Scottish Nationalists in Westminster. Let's go now to the Central Lobby. We're joined by the Shadow Business Minister, Rebecca Long-Bailey. Rebecca Long-Bailey, if you win the confidence vote tomorrow night, there is a pretty good chance of a general election. If you lose it, will your policy then be to have a second referendum?
Well, no, the Prime Minister set out this evening that she was willing to speak to senior politicians, she said, across the House in order to make her withdrawal deal more amenable to Parliament. Now, we've seen this before. We've had 2 years in which to deliver, on such a promise. And unfortunately, what we've got tonight is a government who has faced complete failure. I think tonight's vote, aside from the vote of no confidence tomorrow, is a vote of no confidence in the government. And I struggle to see how she could carry on.
But do you place any store by these talks that the Prime Minister has offered?
Well, of course, I've said before that, we are willing to talk to the government. We've offered it previously to try and get a deal that works for our economy. And certainly, if we lose our vote of no confidence, we'll be putting all options on the table to make sure that we deliver a deal that puts our economy first.
What would the top option be if you can't get a general election? Would it be a second referendum?
Well, as I say, we've got our conference motion was very specific in that we wanted a general election in the event that the government's deal was voted down.
Will you go for a second referendum?
Well, that is one of a number of options.
What's the other option?
I've said before, Andrew, that I think there is a deal that can be found within Parliament around which Parliament can coalesce and that can unite the country. We've set out some of the points that could form part of that deal: a customs union deal, a strong deal with the single market, a floor under existing rights and protections, but not only that, a guarantee not to fall behind the EU in terms of improvements on the environment and workers' rights, for example. But we haven't been given the opportunity over the last 2 years, Andrew, to be able to negotiate with the government a deal that would satisfy those aims.
So if the Prime Minister agreed to all of that, you would back her going back to Europe to get that deal?
If the Prime Minister agreed to Labour's red lines, then we'd have a deal that was essentially similar to what Labour was proposing now. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've had 2 years for those discussions to take place, and tonight we see a government in complete failure who has lost the confidence of Parliament already.
If you win the motion of no confidence, and that does trigger a general election, what will Labour's policy be on Brexit in the manifesto? Will you campaign to remain? Will you campaign to leave on your deal that you would like? Or will you campaign for a second referendum? Which will it be?
Well, of course, our previous manifesto stated that we respected the result of the referendum and that we wanted to secure a deal that put our economy
I know what the previous one said. What will the next one say?
Well, our policy hasn't changed from that position. Obviously, when we do go into the next general election, we will have a discussion. It's called a Clause 4 meeting, which involves various organisations that are affiliated to the Labour Party.
So you would still campaign to leave in a future election, which could come quite soon. Labour's policy would still be to leave the European Union.
Well, exactly. We've said that we respect the result of the referendum. We want a good deal. But in the event that we think that that deal is not possible, we want full flexibility. And that's what our conference motion sought to achieve this summer when we added that extra options on the table part. And that includes a public vote in the event that we're hurtling towards a no deal or an extremely bad deal.
And what if the European Union said, which many commentators think likely, is you can't be part of a customs union unless you're a full member, and you can't be in the single market unless you're a full member? What would you do then if they just knocked you back?
Well, I think we need to be given the opportunity to renegotiate, and we
But
certainly
what would you
haven't.
do if
well,
they
we
knocked
certainly
you
haven't.
back?
Well, Andrew, we haven't put those options on the table to the EU.
That's your party's policy.
No, we have a completely. Well, we haven't been given the opportunity to negotiate with the EU, and that's why we want a general election.
I'm going to have to leave you there. We ran out of time. Thanks for joining us. That's the end of it.